Hiya. Today's book is Charlie Higson's The Enemy, set in the near future, and this is the blurb off the back. The sickness struck everybody over 14. First it twisted their minds, next it ravaged their bodies, and now they roam the streets, crazed and hungry. Across a broken London, the young hide in gangs, scavenging to survive. They can see only one ending. Until, from across the city come rumours of a safe house. To get there, they must face the enemy. The mindless killers who had once promised to love and protect them always. Can they trust each other long enough to make it out alive? Just going to read the first 2 chapters and see what you think. Small Sam was playing in the car park behind Waitrose when the grown-ups took him. He'd been with some of the little kids, having a battle with an odd assortment of action figures when it happened. They weren't supposed to play outside without a guard. But it was a lovely sunny day, and the little kids got bored indoors. Sam wasn't the youngest of the group, but he was the smallest. That's what they called him, Small Sam. There had originally been 2 other Sams, Big Sam and Curly Sam, who got curly hair. Big Sam had been killed a few months ago, but Small Sam was stuck with the name. It was probably because of his size that the grown-ups went for him. They were like that. They picked out the youngest, the weaklings, the little ones. And in the panic of the attack, the rest of Sam's gang got safely back inside, but Sam was cut off and the roving pack of grown-ups trapped him in a corner. They had come over a side wall, led by a big mother in a tracksuit that might once have been pink, but was now so filthy and greasy it looked like grey plastic. She had a fat, egg-like body on the top of long, skinny legs. Her back was bent and she ran stooped over, but surprisingly fast. Her arms held wide like scorpion's claws, her dirty blonde hair hanging straight down, her face blank and stupid, breathing through her mouth. Small Sam was too scared to scream or call for help, and the grown-ups made no noise, so the whole scene was kind of played out in horrible silence. The mother blocked off the route back towards the building while 2 lanky fathers ran at him from either side. Sam dodged them for a few seconds, but he knew that they'd get hold of him in the end. By the time help came from inside, the grown-ups were gone back over the wall, with Sam stuffed inside a sack. Maxie led a group of bigger kids out into the car park, and even though they were armed with spears and clubs and good throwing rocks, they moved cautiously, not knowing exactly what to expect. "We're too late," said Callum, scanning the empty car park. "I think they've got him." "Shame," said a stocky, dark-haired kid called Josh. "I liked him. He was funny." "That's the second attack this week," said Maxie angrily. "What's going on? Either the grown-ups are closing in on us or they're getting braver." "Nah, they ain't brave," said Josh, spitting on the ground. "If they were still here, I'd show 'em brave. I'd mash their ugly faces. Nothing scares me." "So why were they here then?" asked Maxie. "I think they're just hungry," said Josh. "Blimey, we're all hungry," said Callum. "We should have been here," said Maxie. "We should have been watching over them." "Yeah, well, we can't be everywhere at once," Callum pointed out. "There's not enough of us. Not with Aaron out with the scavs. Our job is to keep a lookout from the roof. The little kids knew they weren't supposed to be out there. Nobody should be out there. We should all stay inside." "Oh, come on, we can't stop inside all day," scoffed Josh. "We go crazy." "Well, it's good inside," said Callum. "You're just too scared to come outside," said Josh with a smile. "No, I ain't," said Callum. "No more scared than you." Hey, nothing scares me," says Josh. "Well, then you're stupid," said Callum. "Nah," said Josh. "See, the things about grown-ups is, some of them are strong, some of them can run fast, and some of them are clever. But the strong ones are slow, the fast ones are stupid, and the smart ones are weak." "Yeah, well, you try telling that to Small Sam," Maxie said angrily. "And to Big Sam, and Jono, and Eve, and Mohammed, and all the other kids that we've lost." Yeah, well, grown-ups ain't going to get me, said Josh. What? Said Callum. What, so it was their fault that they got taken? Is that what you're saying? Yeah, I am, said Josh. Will you shut up? Maxie snapped at the two of them. Then she said the thing that nobody wanted to admit. We can't go on like this. Her voice was heavy with bitterness. Soon we're all going to be dead. I can't stand it anymore. She threw down the spear she'd been carrying and sat on the ground, resting her head in her hands. It was her fault, that's all she could think. It was all her fault. When Aaron was away, so she was supposed to be in charge, and she couldn't remember when that had been decided. Aaron was the leader, she was second in command. I don't know, it must have happened early on, when most of the kids had been too frightened and confused to do anything for themselves. Aaron and Maxie had just got on with it, organising everybody, keeping their spirits up. Aaron was clever and likeable. Right from the start, he kept his head and not panicked. He'd been captain of the football team at William Ellis School. Nothing ever seemed to freak him out. The two of them had worked together, a team. Maxie had always been good at getting other children to help out. Yeah, they were better fighters than her, true, but they were happy for her to tell them what to do. They didn't want the responsibility, and when Aaron wasn't there, she was the leader. So it was all her fault. Another kid gone. She shut down that part of her mind. She didn't want to think about what the grown-ups were going to do to small Sam. She started to cry and she didn't care who saw it. Callum looked at Josh. They both felt awkward, and in the end it was Josh who squatted down next to her and put an arm around her shoulders. It's all right, Max, he said quietly. We'll be all right. Look, something will happen. Someone will come. Something's going to change. And when Aaron and the others get back, we'll talk about it maybe, yeah? Make a plan? What's the point? Said Maxie. Come on, when Aaron gets back, yeah? Maxie looked up into Josh's concerned, grubby face. Sorry, she said. Come on, said Callum. Let's try and find out how they got over that wall. Then we should get back inside. Yeah, Maxie jumped up. It was okay as long as you were doing something, as long as you didn't stop and think. She wished Aaron was here, though. She always felt safer when he was around. It was just, what was he going to think? Another kid gone, and all her fault. Chapter 2. A burster was lying in the middle of the road. A father, by the look of it. Though it's hard to tell, he had the familiar look of a vegetable or a piece of fruit left too long in the sun. The skin blackened, shriveled and split, and overripe flesh inside squeezing out. His insides had turned to mush. This was what happened if any grown-up lived long enough to let the disease run its full course. They literally burst. Aaron prodded the body with his trainer. As he did so, the skin popped and a stream of pus oozed out, followed by a bright pink blossom of soft fat. Aaron was leading the scavenger party. Tall, fair-haired and athletic, he had a knife in his belt and carried a pickaxe handle as a club. Oh, that is gross, sniggered the boy at his side, who had a shock of curly hair, bleached almost white. Yeah, come on. We don't have time for this. Aaron turned his back on the corpse and carried on at the Holloway Road. When the first disaster had happened, the kids had been appalled and even fascinated by the dead bodies. But now they were just used to them. They hardly even noticed them. A burster, though, that was a little bit special. The scavenger party took up their positions with Aaron and trudged on. They hadn't gone another 100 yards, however, before the bleach-haired boy, Deke, slowed down. What's that? They stopped and listened. Dogs, said another boy, and he moved to the front. He was shorter than Aaron, not as strong. He'd proved time and time again, though, that fighting wasn't all about strength. Aaron was the leader, but Achilles was the best fighter of them all. With a wiry build, dark eyes and olive skin, he spent most of his spare time shaving elaborate patterns into his short hair. He could be moody and sarcastic and quickly lose his temper. But nobody much minded because he had saved them all many times with his combat skills. He moved fast, used his brain, and was utterly ruthless in a fight. They waited. They could hear the dogs long before they saw them. A cacophony of howling, yelping and barking, all jumbled together. It sounded like a single mad beast. Achilles levelled his spear, pointing it towards the noise. It was made from a metal spike he'd found on a building site. It had a heavy lump at one end, and he'd sharpened the other into a vicious point. It was perfect for keeping grown-ups at bay. He could stab with the front and use the back end to batter them. It was definitely not for throwing. It was too precious for that. Aaron took up a defensive position behind him, next to Freak and Deke. Freak and Deke were a team. Best mates. Before the disaster, they'd taken to the streets armed only with spray cans. Their tag was Freaky Deaky, and it could be seen all over Tufnell Park and Camden Town, sprayed on walls and shutters, stencilled onto the pavements, scratched onto the glass of the bus shelters. They knew all the back ways, all the alleys and the shortcuts. Freak, whose real name was David, had close cropped hair and a thin pinched face, and he was always sniffing. Deke was the bigger of the two. He was good looking and would have been popular with the girls if he hadn't spent all his time with Freak. The two of them were inseparable, always finishing each other's sentences, laughing at each other's jokes. Freak carried an axe and Deke a sledgehammer. They were mainly for knocking down doors and opening windows, although if needed they could be used as weapons. The last in the group was Ollie, small and red-haired, the cleverest of them all. He had sharp eyes and could think quickly. He kept himself to himself, and most of the time he kept quiet, but when he did speak, people listened. Aaron would often ask Ollie for advice, and it was never seen as a weakness. Ollie always knew the best thing to do. As the barking of the dogs grew louder, Ollie stepped back and to one side, keeping a clear line of sight. His weapons were a slingshot that he'd taken from a sports shop. It was a powerful hunter's model, with a pistol grip and a metal brace that fitted over his forearm. He drew the elastic back and tucked a heavy steel ball into the worn leather pouch. Whenever the kids were out of the camp, they travelled in a group of at least 4. 1 to look ahead and lead the way, 2 to check the sides, and 1 to watch their backs. But as Freak and Deke always worked together, there were 5 of them today. They'd learned early on to move down the middle of the roads rather than to stay out of sight amongst the buildings and along the sides. Grown-ups could hide in the shadows and grab you from the darkness. They weren't such a threat in the open, because on the whole they didn't move fast enough. The biggest danger was if you got surrounded, because in a mass, the grown-ups were a real threat. Bigger, heavier than the kids, and diseased. Grown-ups were rarely organised enough to plan any real strategy though, and for the most part they just came lumbering out in a pack from the side. Then the best thing to do was run. Anything to avoid a fight. Dogs were different, however. Unpredictable, dangerous. "Are they coming our way?" said Freak, scratching his stubbly head. "Yeah, I think so," said Ollie, his slingshot creaking. "Yeah, let them," said Achilles. "I'm ready." "It gets more dangerous every time we come out," said Aaron. "Come on, tell me about it," said Deke, nervously twisting his sledgehammer in his hand. Then the first of the dogs appeared. A skinny mongrel with one eye. It bowled out into the street, fell over, wriggled on the ground, then lay on its back in surrender. A second dog, though, was hard on its tail, a dirty Staffordshire Terrier. It had evidently been chasing the mongrel, because it came at him with teeth bared and hackles raised. There was almost a comical moment when the 2 dogs realised that they'd got an audience. They both did a double take and looked at the boys in surprise. The rest of the pack came into view at almost the same time, howling and barking. They skidded to a halt, and a couple of them knocked it into the staff, who turned and snapped at them. The little mongrel saw its moment and scurried off. The Staffordshire Bull Terriers stood there sniffing the air. The other dogs were a mismatched mob, with missing fur, diseased eyes, caked with pus. Some were limping, some wounded. One sat down in the road and vigorously scratched its ear until another dog bit it and it scampered away. The bull terrier strutted forward, growling. Then it started to bark at the boys, and the rest of the pack joined in. Instantly, the street was filled with their racket. "Oh God, are they going to attack, do you think?" asked Freak. "I don't know, it depends how hungry they are," said Aaron. "Yeah, well, they look pretty hungry to me," said Deke, and he gripped his sledgehammer tighter. "That's all right, just try and scare them off. said Aaron, and the boys now made a racket of their own, yelling, screaming, waving their arms. The dogs backed off, but the bolder ones were soon inching closer. The big bull terrier shook its head and nosed ahead, his claws scratching on the tarmac. "You take him out," said Aaron. "He's the boss. Then maybe the others will get the message." Ollie loosened his slingshot. The steel ball hit the dog squarely in the forehead. Its legs crumpled and he went down without a sound. The other dogs sniffed him, and one or two set up howling. Then a big Alsatian ran from the back of the pack, leading 3 other hounds with him. Achilles went down on one knee as the dog pounced. He struck him through the chest with his spear, and the followers veered off to the side, and Ollie hit one more with the steel ball, breaking its leg. It yelped and turned tail, dragging its leg behind. And with a great war cry, the boys charged, and the rest of the dogs scattered. Ollie quickly searched the area for his ammunition. He found his second ball lying in the gutter. The first one was stuck in the Staffage's skull in a neat case of bone, and the 5 of them knelt by the dead body. "Think we can risk eating that?" said Freak. "What's that parasite that Maeve's always talking about? That worm thing you can catch from eating dogs? Is it tricky something?" "Trichinosis," said Aaron. "He'll be all right if he's well cooked." "Yeah," said Deke. "Come on, we'll deep-fry him in batter with some chips and a nice glass of wine, eh? Delicious." Freak giggled. "I think I know a Jamie Oliver recipe for fried dog." "Yeah, well, come on, we can't waste any food," said Aaron. "Some of the kids are getting really thin. Leave the Alsatian, though. He's too big to carry, and his carcass might keep the pack here busy." Achilles took out his knife and gutted the dead animal, leaving the purple-grey entrails in the road to further distract the other dogs. He then tied the dog's legs together with some nylon cord and slung it over Aaron's shoulder. "Should we go back?" said Freak. "We need to find as much food as we can," said Aaron. "It's always a risk leaving camp, and it gets riskier every time. The dog's not going to be enough for 20 of us." Every day a scavenging party left the camp to look for supplies. They searched among the empty houses and flats for any abandoned cans, packets and bottles. Each time they had to start their search further from Waitrose. All the buildings close by had long since been picked clean. Most days they found nothing, but a lucky discovery could last them a long time. They knew it couldn't last though. They'd already been through every accessible building within a mile of Waitrose, except round Crouch End, which had been destroyed in a fire, and up and around the Arsenal football stadium, where there was a large nest of grown-ups. Sooner or later, they would have to move camp. But where would they go? Aaron pushed his hair out of his eyes. His guts hurt. He didn't really feel hungry anymore, just sick and tired. He'd grown to hate these streets, the smell of them, the filth everywhere, the grass and weeds pushing out of every crack, the constant fear chewing away at him. He'd been happy at first when they'd made him leader, but then it slowly dawned on him that he was responsible for everyone else. If anything went wrong, he'd have to take the blame. That was why someone like Achilles, who could easily beat him in a fight, was happy not to be in charge. He could show off and suck up the praise, but when a tough decision had to be made, he'd sit back, hold up his hands, and he'd let Aaron sweat it out. It was a warm and sunny spring day. There was a real sense that summer wasn't far off. Normally, Aaron would have enjoyed the sunshine and warmth, and in the past he'd always loved seeing that first green leaves coming out on the trees, as if the world was waking up. Now it just meant that the grown-ups were going to be getting bolder. In the winter they'd been too cold and feeble to be much danger, but the change in the weather seemed to give them new courage and strength. Their attacks were becoming more frequent. They were hungrier than ever. The kids trudged up the Holloway Road. It was full of memories for Aaron. Eating at the McDonald's, shopping with his mum, going to the cinema. He tried to shut the memories out. They only made him feel worse. When they came to Archway, they moved more cautiously. There was a tube station here, a perfect hiding place for grown-ups. "Which way?" said Deke. "Highgate Road," said Aaron. "We'll work our way towards the Whittington." "Eh? I ain't going to no hospital," said Achilles. "What? What's the problem?" "There won't be nothing in there," said Achilles. "Dunno, maybe drugs," said Ollie. "Paracetamol, antibiotics and that." "Oh, I doubt it," said Deke. "When everything kicked off, it would have been the first place to get looted." "Well, come on, we'll just go and take a look anyway," said Aaron, "just in case. But let's try the houses round here first." "I ain't going to no hospital," Achilles repeated. What about the swimming pool then? Said Freak. What about it? Said Achilles. It's worth a look, eh? Why? Said Achilles. What, you fancy a swim? Nah, said Freak, but there's always a vending machine in there. No, it never worked, said Achilles. Always stole your money, that one. Come on, it's worth a look, said Freak. Think about it. Mars bars, crisps, chewing gum. There won't be nothing in there, said Achilles. Not after all this time. Look, listen, Freak insisted. Far as we know, us and the Morrison's crew are the only kids around. And they never come up here. All I'm saying is we should look. Okay? If we're looking in the Whittington, we should look in the pool as well. We search everywhere. Isn't that right, Aaron? Suppose so, said Aaron. No. It's a waste of time, said Ollie. When have we ever found a vending machine with anything in it? What? You agree with me, don't you, Deke? Said Freak. Oh, come on, he agrees with everything you say, Achilles scoffed. Go on, try me, said Deke. All right, the world is flat, said Freak. Yes, it is, said Deke. Penguins can fly, said Freak. Yes, they can, said Deke. I'm the greatest kid that ever walked the earth, said Freak. Yes, you are, said Deke. Oh, ha, 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 yeah, very funny, said Achilles. Aki is a twat, said Freak. Yes, he is, said Deke. Yeah, all right, I think you made your point, said Aaron, trying not to smile. Come on, we'll take a look. Ollie sighed. This was a waste of time. What they needed was proper food, not sweets. But Aaron had spoken, and he was their leader. Ollie shoved a hand into his jacket and rolled the heavy steel shot ball between his fingers. The cold hardness did comfort him. He didn't like the idea of exploring the swimming pool. He was always scared on these hunts, and going into the unknown like this just made his heart race faster. Come on, said Aaron, let's go. Searching the swimming pool is a genius idea, said Freak. Yes, it is, said Deke. Very exciting, great writer, The Enemy by Charlie Higson. Give it a look, and I think you'll really enjoy it.